Hi, I'm Bob Tabor. In this module, I'm going to demonstrate how to set up Azure CDN. It's now a CDN is a content delivery network, CDN, and it allows you to put your static files, so your JavaScript, your CSS, your image files, anything that's static, as close to your website visitor as possible. So what you do is you publish these files to this centralized storage that's called the origin domain. It's basically just a blob in an Azure storage account that you're going to upload your files to. And then Microsoft Azure has, servers all over the world that are called edge servers. And so your files will eventually, it takes maybe an hour, maybe longer, to propagate those files out to all of those edge servers. Now, whenever a request comes in for one of those files, the CDN will route the user's request to an IP address where the file is stored as close to them as possible on one of these edge servers. All right. So basically, you're given a URL that manages incoming requests, and then you go into your HTML and you change all of your locations for those static files. Again, anything static, HTML, HTML, we can talk about that in a moment, but mostly CSS, JavaScript, image files, things of that nature. You change your references to them, and then you're good to go. So if a request comes in for a given image, for example, the Azure CDN will determine the closest edge server to that visitor, return the IP address for that edge server, and they'll be able to download those assets more quickly than they would if the request had to come from around the world. So what we're going to do is set this up, and then we're going to talk about some other use cases for CDN as well. To expedite this, I've already created a new Azure storage account called Hero vs. Monster CDN. Azure CDN will use this as the origin domain. Next, I'm going to create a new CDN service. This takes a while, so I've already done it off camera as well, but I simply went to New App Service, CDN, Quick Create, and I selected the Azure storage account that I was planning on using as the origin domain. And next, I uploaded an image to a new blob in my Azure storage account. Now, there's a bunch of different tools out there that can help you do this, but I like this http://zud.io tool. I'm using the free trial here, but I plan on subscribing. It's only $5 a month. It's pretty reasonable. But it allows me to manage my storage account from any device as long as it has a web browser, which is pretty awesome. And so using that tool, I created a folder called images, and then I uploaded an image called commander.png. And it's got some neat features. You can even click on it to inspect the file itself. And I wanted to make sure that this all works, so I used the URL from the CDN page, and I navigated to the CDN site in the images folder and searched for the commander.png file. And I can see that it's now live and it's on all the edge servers. Again, I did this off camera, but it took about an hour. And so at this point, I could change all the references to this file to include this new URL, and my users will enjoy the better performance since they're going to be able to download the file from the location that's geographically closer to them. And so that's the basic use case. Let's spend a few more minutes here and take a look at what else you can do with all this. If you click on the name of the CDN, you can get into its settings and you can modify how the CDN actually works. So this first feature down here at the bottom is enabling query strings. So what you can do is you can add a query string to your initial request for that commander.png file, for example. And so now I'm just navigating to the same file name just with a query string that I made up, ID equals 1 on the end. And now I'm going back to the origin domain, in other words, my Azure storage account using that Zudio tool. I'm going to delete the existing file, and then I'm going to upload a different file, but one that has the exact same name. Now, the edge servers can cache a file for, I think, 7 days is the default, before attempting to even see if there's a new version of the file that exists out there. And so this is where the query strings actually come in. So if you give it a different URL with a different query string, or the same URL with a different query string, like instead of ID equals 1, you use ID equals 2, I can force the edge servers to give me the newer uncached version. So what happens to the original one where ID equals 1? Well, as you can see, it's still there. I can still get to it, I guess because it's still cached. So that's the query string feature. It's pretty cool. It allows you to, even though the default cache time is longer, it allows you to swap or change out the cache more quickly on your end through your reference to this particular file using a query string. So the next thing you can do with the CDN is that you can add custom domains so that you can avoid that ugly CDN domain name and you can use something prettier. In fact, if you only use static HTML files, you could actually serve up your entire website from just the CDN, making it lightning fast from anywhere in the world. Now we're not going to set up custom domains. Honestly, it works just like the other custom domain setting for Azure websites, and we've already covered that. More interesting to me personally is this Enable HTTPS button. So if you're using an SSL certificate on an HTTPS connection, many web browsers will complain that the web page was sent via HTTPS, but the images or the JavaScript or the CSS files were served up from a non-secure connection. So even though your web page might be secure, some of the other files that you're referencing may not be secure unless you're also serving them up from HTTPS. Now, I guess that's some sort of backdoor that a hacker could use to gain access to any passwords or credit card numbers or whatever you're communicating via HTTPS. So this Enable HTTPS button gets around that by allowing the CDN domain name to be accessed by either HTTP or HTTPS. So what if your web page is sometimes accessed via HTTP and then sometimes it's accessed via HTTPS? What do you do in that case? Well, in that case, you can use what's called a protocol relative URL. So basically, you just strip off the HTTP colon or the HTTPS from either the source if it's an image or the href if it's an anchor. And so what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to do that actually in Visual Studio Online just to show you that it works. Okay, so as you see, I'm here in Visual Studio Online and I'm going to make that change. I'm removing the HTTP colon. I'm leaving just 2 forward slashes. And now I'm going to go back over here and I'm going to access the web page at HTTP and I'm going to look at the source. And so you can see that the change propagated and it's accessible from both protocols. Very cool. And that's it for CDN. Here's another feature that I see myself utilizing for every Azure website project from this point on. It's very cool, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Scott Hanselman. It is Azure Friday, and I'm here with Manling Zhang. We're going to learn all about what's new in the CDN.
Correct.
Which makes me happy because I use the CDN for my podcast.
Sounds good. So today I'm going to talk about 3 features that we've implemented recently, including some very exciting updates that we have when creating a new CDN point, the Azure CDN integration with media services, and also accessibility to some analytics through another supplemental portal.
Cool.
So first I'm going to talk about is the exciting update that we have when creating new CDN. So remember, before when you create a new CDN point, you have a list of origin in your subscription to choose from. And that means you are only limited to use like storage, website, and cloud services, which is Azure services as the CDN origin.
Yeah, when I made my CDN, I originally made it from a storage account and did everything manually.
I see.
Now I don't have to.
Yes, correct. So you basically create a CDN endpoint. You select the origin type you want to point your CDN to, and then it will show up the list here. And then you simply click the create, and it will pop up to here and says start configuring.
Now this notion of origin, maybe you could explain a little bit of that to me, because I didn't quite understand this kind of, I'm not sure the correct word for it. It's a cache of kinds, because someone's going to hit the CDN URL
Correct.
looking for an image. They're going to hit CDN URL /images/foo.
Yes.
The CDN is going to look and not find it?
Correct. So basically, the origin is where your content is initially stored.
Okay.
Like your files, your website is on some server over there. So you create a CDN endpoint. So customer will first hit the CDN edge node, which has the if there is no cached content over there, you will go back, which called miss. It will go back to the storage or website to get the content and come back to the edge server, and it will store there based on the caching policy that you can set up, and then you will reply back to the customer for that.
Okay, so the important thing, I think the part that took me a second to understand is this origin, I don't want the customer hitting that anymore.
Correct.
Right?
Yes. So you want to offload the origin, because you probably have, if everybody is hitting your origin, you have lots of spikes of traffic, and you will be very slow, and your global users cannot reach very fastly to your origin. So you want to bring the content closer to the end users and make them available to the end users.
So for example, I have a podcast, and I have www.hanselminutes.com/images. That's a web app, and I'd rather that it not serve all my images. I want to have images.hanselminutes.com/. So the origin is the www. I don't want people hitting that. So I'm going to change my URLs
Correct.
to the CDN.
Yes, so you basically point your image, your customer-facing domain name, point to a CNAME that has CDN configured, and that one in the backend, the CDN will point to your origin. So your customer-facing domain, all you're hitting is the front-end domain name that you have.
Okay, and then things that the CDN doesn't find, it goes to the origin, it gets them once, and now it's on that edge node for future customers to hit.
Correct, and also based on the caching policy. So you can set up like a week or 2 weeks or a year of caching time on the server.
That's a good point. If I put up the wrong guest's picture, I might update that, but CDN people may not see it for 7 days if my policy says 7 days.
Yeah, so the best practice is to put the version of your image. We always have customers to do that, or you have a purge of the content. You can refresh the content. So we will make this ability available to everybody. So right now you can send a ticket to the support, and they will help you to purge the content from the edge servers, and then all the requests will go back to the origin for the new one.
Okay, and then in the future you'll have some portal for me to
Correct.
be able to do
Exactly.
that. Okay, and then one of the things you were pointing out that the different origin types, there's a new origin type.
Yes, it's the custom origin. So you are not limited to use Azure services as your CDN origin. So you can type any origin you want, such as your own data centers or other third-party cloud services providers. So you, like for example, I can do http://www.bing.com.
I see.
And then you can create, and which will gives you a new CDN point start creating.
Okay, so you're actually making a CDN that will go and be the CDN
Correct.
for Bing.
Yes, and then you can replace this domain name and for images, and this will go through the CDN.
Right, so this URL here, this kind of funky URL, that's the automatically generated CDN
Exactly.
one.
And then you can, like you do, you can create a custom domain name to point to that system-generated domain name, and you can use the custom domain name as the front-end URL.
So then what I'm hearing you say is that this is really good for people who have a site, maybe their corporate site. It's not in Azure. They like it where it is.
Yes.
But their images or their PDFs or their product files, whatever, big files, maybe they've outgrown their server. They can make images.myserver.com, point at their original origin, and all they have to do is then change the URLs
Yep.
And the CDN is going to start working for them right away.
Correct. You can create the CDN point. You can create the host name from here. When you go to the origin, you can. It's the managed domains. So
Right.
you can.
Oh, there you go.
Yep. Here it is.
And then here is the auto-generated one, and I would say images or cdn.mycompany or whatever makes me happy. And
Yep.
then I'd set that in my domain registrar.
Correct. Exactly.
That's slick. That's actually really convenient. In my mind, I'm thinking of a couple of sites I have that aren't at Azure. I could
okay.
set the CDN
Yes,
up in
exactly.
probably 15 minutes.
Yep. Yes, absolutely. So this is the first updates that we did for this part, and the second one is once you click an origin URL, it will disappear from the list, which means you cannot create second CDN endpoint for the same origin. Now we got rid of that restriction. And the last one is in the cloud services, before you have a /CDN in your origin hostname. So we're basically forced you to put the content under the CDN folder. So now we got rid of that restriction as well, so you can put in any folder as you want.
So then cloud apps, web apps, storage, custom origin, all kind of treated as peers and a lot more flexibility for everybody.
Absolutely. Yep.
And then why might I want to have two CDNs? This is for more control or maybe URL sharding?
Correct, exactly. So basically, you can put like image 1, image 2 / in the same under the same host header, and then which will have multiple send multiple requests to that, and which improve your loading for the performance.
I see. So you'd have more parallelism
Exactly.
on those
Yep.
things. All right, cool.
So that's the first feature I want to share with you. So the second one is since March this year, we've integrated with Azure Media Services. So now for any streaming endpoint that you have, you can easily enable CDN for that. So if you click Add, and you can see there is a checkbox with Enable CDN. So as simple as that, just enter name and enable CDN, and that's it.
Now we're talking about something as simple as a checkbox or a flip, disabled, enabled. What does that really mean? I mean, when we're streaming, I'm thinking of that as being, the bytes are streaming. Are we saying that the media image, the media video file now moves to the edge server?
It actually means that whenever the customer using this hostname, actually we are going to use the exact the same hostname for the CDN. So when users visit the hostname to watch the streaming, the live stream or videos, they are going to hit CDN instead of going to the streaming origin directly.
Oh, wow. And how do you do that? Is that a DNS
It's the
trick?
backend DNS mapping that we did. Yes.
That's really nice. So then for people who are already using Azure Streaming, it's basically the make it faster button.
Yep, exactly. So we want to make the workflow very simple, no change, DNS change, whatever workflow change for the customer. And so they can use the exactly same hostname.
That's a nice feature.
Yep. I'll just quick note that if you want to enable CDN for an existing streaming endpoint, you need to stop it first and enable it and turn it back on.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So the last piece I want to mention is the single sign-on. So probably you've noticed when I click here, you have a grayed out button called Manage CDN.
Right.
So this is a single sign-on from the Azure portal to a supplemental portal, which allows us to expose advanced features such as analytics, geo-blocking, prior to the availability in the Azure portal.
Right, and this is common for things we've seen. Web jobs
Yep.
have these external portals.
Yep.
Azure Batch.
Absolutely.
All right, very cool. We're learning all about the CDN features here on Azure Friday. Hi, I'm Scott Hansman, and it's Azure Friday. We're here with Inji Zarif, who's going to talk to us about some of the new stuff happening around the Azure CDN.
Hi, so today we're going to talk about the new features that we just announced on the new Azure portal for CDN. And there are many cool features, but I'm going to focus on three main ones today. So I'm going to do the new improved portal experience for CDN, the new endpoint configurations with a new level of granularity, and the final big features that everybody has been waiting for is content purge.
Very cool.
So if we can start by just finding CDN on the portal. So if you click CDN profiles, that takes you to all the profiles available under this subscription. A CDN profile is basically just a logical grouping of your CDN endpoints. So you can group your endpoints by feature, by product, by configuration, like say you have pricing tiers, so you want to group them differently. So
Let me ask you a quick question, though.
Yeah.
I've been a long-time CDN customer, and I always have to go into the existing classic portal. Are my existing CDN things that I've used for so many years, are they going to appear in the new portal
Yeah.
without me doing anything?
Great question. So for now, if you see CDN Endpoints Classic, if you click that, that will take you to the old portal to manage your existing CDN endpoints.
Okay.
And in a month or two, these will be migrated to the new portal, so you don't need to worry about getting to the old portal anymore.
Fantastic. That's exactly what I wanted to hear.
Okay. So if we click on Cool Profile here, you can see that this is a standard profile. You will see the endpoints available on that profile. So there is an endpoint here.
I see. And then you've got your own custom host name appears there as well.
Exactly. So I will walk you now through the second piece of this session, which is about the endpoint configurations and the endpoint features, the new ones that we have. So if I click on Add Endpoint, then I can select a name. And in the old portal, you didn't have control on the endpoint name. So we would just generate a unique name for you. But now
Right.
I can name my endpoint Amazing Endpoint. And this name will be appended to azureedge.net, and ooh, it's available. So
Did
good.
we always have AzureEdge.net? That's a great domain.
I think we
Azure
did.
Edge?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Azure Edge was always there. Just amazing endpoint and like the endpoint name.
Right.
This is what you
Your
have more
CNAME
control
and- okay.
on. Yeah. You can select origin types. That has always been there. So I would pick custom origin,
Right.
for example, and I will do Bing. A new thing that you can add now is you can have an origin path and origin host header. So in the old portal, you didn't really control the origin host header. Now you have origin host header, and I can add path. For example, I need only images. I don't need everything under this website.
Right.
Also, some of the cool stuff you can do is you have control on the traffic, either HTTP or HTTPS. You can control the port. You can see 40, 443, and 80, and I can disable HTTP.
Okay, that's nice.
Yeah,
Secure only.
exactly. So it will be secured from end to end. And if I click Add, then I will have this endpoint added to my profile.
Yeah, and definitely one of the nice things about being in the Azure portal now is that if you know how to use things in other blades, you know how to configure CDN. It's a very
Exactly.
familiar experience.
Yeah, so as you can see, we just created a successful endpoint. And if you click on that endpoint, you will find more features that you can control. So if you have configure here, you have control over compression, query string caching. You can change the protocols even after the endpoint is created, and also changing the host header. So if I enable compression, I say compression enabled.
Oh,
This
nice.
is the list of all the MIME types that are available for compression. So I can add a new MIME type here. Or for query string caching, I can control ignore query strings, cache, bypass. In the old portal, it was only on and off. Now you have more options on controlling this, so it's pretty cool. And if I select save, it will just propagate these configurations to the endpoint.
Because it's now in the Azure portal, because you're a first-class member of the Azure portal, and you're a part of the Azure Resource Manager, does this mean that I can have endpoints and CDNs be part of a larger ARM deployment? So when I'm creating my websites and I really want CDN to be a part of that.
Yes, we
You
are
can get
working
involved
on
too.
that actually. There are templates now, and you can, when you are creating your service, you can deploy the template and have CDN as a part of your service. So there will be a lot of Visual Studio integration, a lot of Azure integration with other services
Awesome.
that you will have CDN just naturally flowing in your service. So you don't have to worry about too much configuration and stuff.
That's great. This is pretty exciting.
Yeah, it is. So the last exciting feature that everybody has been asking for a number of years now, and now it's finally out, is Content Purge. So if we go and do Purge, say that you created an endpoint and you specified the origin and a specific file, and then that file is the wrong file. So oops.
This
Now
has
it's
happened to me
cached.
a lot, actually. I have a podcast and I have the headshots of the people on the show, and if I miss number one, I'll have the wrong
Oh.
person's face appear, and then I have to wait, don't I, for the CDN to expire?
Yeah, so the cool part is now you have Purge. So if the content is wrong, you don't have to wait for the cache to expire, which takes so long and not efficient. So I can do Purge all, which will purge all the content under the endpoint, or say, no, I don't want to purge all the cache. So I will just do images/image1
I see.
.jpeg, or I can do also
You do wildcards?
Yeah, so Purge all is basically a wildcard, but I can do, for example, videos slash.
Ah, fantastic.
Yep, and that will delete everything under this directory. And the cool part about Purge is it's very fast. So within a minute, you will.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you will try to load the content, and boom, it's now from the origin, and it's the correct input, and then it will cache it again. So it's pretty cool. And the nice part about the portal is all the features that we just showed here are available through the REST APIs and the SDK that's coming up soon. So you can do much more with developer support than just what's available on the
And you said a
Azure
REST
portal.
API is coming soon.
Yeah, so the .NET SDK and a lot of other SDKs are coming up. So
This is
Can
great.
wait for
It's
that.
really nice to have a first-class CDN integrated at this level. Into
yeah,
Azure.
it's really exciting to be working on that product.
Very cool. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
We're learning all about the Azure CDN here on Azure Friday.
Hello everyone, my name is Lavanya and I'm here to talk about Azure File Storage. Azure File Storage users can now fully manage file shares in the cloud. Azure File Storage exposes these file shares using the SMB 3.0 protocol, which is the preferred file share protocol used on-premise. Azure File Storage enables you to mount the file share from anywhere in the world, plus enables you to develop modern applications that integrate with legacy applications using simple REST APIs. Azure Storage customers can also use a brand new file explorer in the Azure Preview portal, admin command line tools like PowerShell and Azure CLI, as well as our powerful client libraries to manage file shares. To summarize, the key features that Azure File Storage provides are SMB 3.0 support that includes encryption and persistent handles, a brand new file explorer built inside the Azure Preview portal, Azure Storage Metrics for Azure File Storage, and the ability to mount file shares from outside of Azure data centers. And finally, Azure File Storage is built on the same technology as the blob, table, and queue storage, which means Azure File Storage is able to leverage the existing availability, durability, scalability, and geo-redundancy that is built into our platform. I will now walk you through a simple demo of how one can create a file share on the Azure Preview portal. I can create a file share up to 5 terabytes of data. I'm creating a file share called test file demo. I can now create directories under that file share, calling it, let's say, images. As you can see, I've created 2 file shares with directories, images under both file shares. And now I can upload pictures. As you can see, the image got uploaded. And I can download the image as well. So using the file shares, we also offer the connect functionality that gives you the net use command for you to mount this file share from your Windows client. So as you can see, we've made it much easier for you to create and manage file shares easily through the portal. You can also mount and use file shares both on Windows and Linux clients. Please check out our documentation for more details. Thank you for your time.
Hi everyone, my name is Jason Tang. I'm a program manager with Microsoft Azure Storage team. Today I'm super excited to have this opportunity demonstrate how Linux user can work with Azure File Storage. Azure File Storage offers fully managed file shares in the cloud. There are multiple options available for Linux users to manage Azure file shares. They can either mount the file share from their Linux client through SMB protocol, or they can use in Azure Portal, Azure CLI, as well as Azure Client Libraries or REST API to access Azure file shares. In today's demo, I'd like to show you how I can create a file share from Azure Portal and then mount the same file share from 3 different Linux clients. Now let's switch to the demo. First, let's go to Azure Portal. Let me create a new file share and call it demo file share within 100 gigabyte size. Okay. Now first, let me switch to my Ubuntu box. This is a Ubuntu Server 15.04 client I created in the same Azure region with the file shares. So first, let me just try to install latest Samba client as well as the latest CIFS module. And then next is, let me see if I already have the mount point. I create a drive folder early, so I will use it as the mount point. And then this is the mount command. I specify using CIFS module, specify the file share path, mount point, version, as well as my storage account name and storage account key. Let's see if it mounted successfully. Okay, I can see I mounted file share 100 gigabyte I specify from Portal successfully. So let's create a new file under this file share. Let's call it log.txt, and then let me add it one line here. So this is the file I will try to access and edit from my other Linux client later. So this is from my Ubuntu client. Now let me switch to my CentOS. This is my CentOS 7.1 client, which I created early in the same region as the file share as well. I will using this command to download the latest CIFS module and the Samba client. And then let's see if I have the mount point created. Not yet. So I will go ahead to create the mount point and then use the same command. Okay, so I mounted the same file share successfully. Let me try to open the file under this file share. Okay, I can see the edits. Let me just go ahead edit one more line. Hello from CentOS. Looks great. Now let me switch to my third Linux client, which is my OpenSUSE. This is OpenSUSE 13.2 client I created early, which is sitting in the same region as the file share as well. So this is the command I can use to install the Samba client And safes module, let me just skip this one. Let me see. Okay, let me create mount point. Okay, mount. Great, I mounted the same file share 100 gig. Let's see if the file, I can still edit the file in the file share. Okay, let me edit one more line here, as you can imagine. Okay, I added this line successfully from my OpenSUSE client. Now let me go back to the portal. I can click the file share. From portal I can see I do have this file created. Let's download this file. I can see all the edits. So this proves Linux user can actually use in different Linux distributions. We recommend it to mount the file share and use the file share from their Linux client. For more information, please go to microsoftazure.com for the documentation on how you can leverage Azure file storage. Thanks for watching.